quote, "This is why we can't have nice things," end quote. It's a message I got from an exasperated senior Republican congressional aide after President Trump abruptly announced he will not sign a bipartisan housing affordability bill that Congress passed overwhelmingly yesterday. Here's what the president said, quote, "Today's housing news conference and signing is hereby canceled until such time as we pass the desperately needed Save America Act, which I consider to be a national emergency." Now, the president really pulled the rug out from under Republicans at the very moment GOP leaders were celebrating what they thought was about to be a big GOP victory, a presidential signing ceremony.
Let's show the American people what legislating looks like. Let's show the American people how you bring together and do something on a bicameral basis. And we did that. And we did that in conjunction with President Trump and his priorities.
Again, that was at the almost exact same moment President Trump posted that he's not signing that very bill that the chairman said shows what legislating looks like. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson at that same press conference a few minutes later.
In the process of this press conference, President Trump announced that he is canceling the bill signing for the housing bill that you all were just talking about. What is your reaction?
Yeah, my reaction is the truth of the matter. I spoke to the president for 20 minutes before I went in and gave that rousing speech to the House Republicans this morning. He and I've talked about this a lot. He has expressed the priority and the preference of the Save America Act.
Now, Johnson claims President Trump told him in that call this morning that he was going to cancel the signing. Let's get straight to Manu Raju on Capitol Hill. Wow, Manu.
Yeah, completely blindsiding Republican leaders, particularly here in the Senate. The Senate Majority Leader John Thune had no idea that the president would essentially cancel what was expected to be a victory lap. The Republicans have been pleading with the president to focus on an affordability agenda, and they just passed this bill with massive bipartisan majorities in the House and the Senate. They wanted to go and tout their efforts to reduce housing costs, and just moments ago, that announcement by the president catching the Republican leaders off guard. I just talked to John Thune himself moments ago. I asked him, did the president make a mistake by canceling the signing ceremony and making these demands on the Save America Act? He said, that was his call to make. And he went on to tout that housing bill, said it's been worked on for a long time. He called it a great piece of legislation. He said it's a, quote, an affordability issue. And he said, quote, I eventually hope he'll find his way to sign it. So expect that to be a big part of this discussion that is still expected to happen behind closed doors. Trump has been making this case for months for the Senate to pass the so-called Save America Act, but they have tried repeatedly in the Senate to do that, and they simply just do not have the votes to pass it. John Thune has made that case to the president directly. He has said that publicly. Other Republican senators have said that. Trump has come back and said, well, just do away with the filibuster and try to pass it along straight party lines. But Thune does not have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. That is a second problem that the Senate Republican leader has. Meantime, the Speaker of the House says that they may try to roll this into the budget process to pass the Save America Act along straight party lines. But here's another problem. Doing that would run afoul, very likely, in the Senate's very strict budget rules. So there is really no way to get this bill to the president's desk. And meantime, the legislative agenda has been completely stymied. A key surveillance law, the spying powers have been turned off. The position for the Director of National Intelligence is not filled on a permanent basis because of the president's demands. So the question here, Dana, is amid this turmoil between the Senate GOP and President Trump, will anything change when he meets behind closed doors? Will he berate those GOP senators? Will they convince him that his push is not actually going to succeed? All big questions in a matter of moments. We'll see what happens behind closed doors, Dana.
Yeah, and you can see all the activity behind Manu. That is because the president is still expected to be up there despite saying he's not going to sign this bill. Manu, thank you so much. Let us know if you hear anything else. Here with a terrific group of reporters. Let me just bottom line this because there's so much drama in what happened. But taking a step back, what the president is doing is saying, I care so much about this legislation that he wants to be put in place about voting to make it harder to vote and having to do with a whole bunch of other restrictions, I should say. He thinks it's about cleaning it up, but there are lots of debates on that. He cares so much about that the number one issue for voters, which is affordability, and housing is a huge part of that, he's willing to sacrifice that despite a big bipartisan vote.
Yeah, I mean, I would just ask you to do this. Look at the bipartisan numbers in the House and the Senate that this legislation passed with, overwhelmingly, right? How often does that happen? When do we see both parties coming together to address a major concern of voters and actually pass something? That just is not
Yesterday on
part
the show,
I know you said
about it. We said
legislators
breaking
legislate.
news.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
We're putting
And
up
it's
some of the
So like
specifics.
this doesn't happen anymore in our politics. There is nobody you talk to that I've talked to on the Republican side or Democratic side that just didn't see this as a huge win for all these members to go out and sell on the campaign trail. And you are right. Donald Trump is saying, you don't get that win to go sell this on the campaign trail, at least not yet, until I get to hammer away at this bill that I keep being told I don't have the votes to actually pass.
Yeah. And on that bill, the Save America Act, this is one example of a Republican who's in a tough race, Senator John Husted. He is from Ohio, and he said to CNN today, the Save America Act is very important. I voted for it 6 times. The Housing Act is also very important. I did my job, and I got this housing bill passed, and I'm confident that the president will sign the bill eventually. We'll just continue to work with him to get that done.
Well, the blindsiding just doesn't stop of Senate Republican leaders, because when the president put this announcement out on Truth Social, Senate Majority Leader John Thune was speaking on the Senate floor about this very issue, getting ready to walk across the Capitol to Statuary Hall for that signing ceremony, where everything was still set up, the presidential podium, the desk where he signs legislation, and then the rug was pulled out from under them once again. This happened, of course, with the Jay Clayton nomination for Director of National Intelligence, and Senate Republican leaders were already going into this meeting today with Donald Trump pretty nervous about it, to be honest with you, because they expected a berating from President Trump. They didn't know which of their members would have enough courage to speak up and essentially say, Mr. President, not only does your push not have the votes, but it's undermining us politically. Mm-hmm. And I want to underscore a message that I got from a senior Senate Republican aide here who said, quote, never in my lifetime have I seen a president so deliberately attempt to lose majorities for his own party. That's how they feel about this right now.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump is clearly very frustrated with the Senate. We reported that last week. One person close with both President Trump and John Thune described it as, we take 2 steps forward, but then keep having to check to see if there are any landmines around. This is very clearly a landmine. When you talk to White House officials, they say that President Trump's main priorities are the Save America Act, getting rid of the Senate parliamentarian who he feels is in the way of getting past some of these big bills that he wants to do, and that blue slip process when it comes to judges. Nowhere in those 3 things I listed is this housing bill. And so I think you're seeing the president
or any kind of affordability.
Or any kind of affordability. Obviously, the one thing that voters are worried about. And so I think you're seeing the president say, I'm going to twist the knife to try to get something that I want. And you're seeing Republicans say, we don't have it. And I don't know how that exactly ends unless one of them basically backs down. And I don't think you're going to see President Trump do that immediately.
And if you just to sort of put a finer point on the bipartisanship, we had the big vote. But the lead sponsors of this were Tim Scott, who I actually bumped into on Capitol Hill yesterday, and he was over the moon, understandably so, because they got such a big vote. And he said that they had other bits of bipartisan legislation on the economy coming, and Elizabeth Warren. So Tim Scott, Elizabeth Warren. Listen to what Elizabeth Warren said about this presidential move.
It's a complete indifference to the cost squeeze on American families and to genuine efforts to do something about it. You know, he could be over here trying to claim a victory lap, and instead he's saying, no, he doesn't want anything to do with it.
And I'm not sure who President Trump thinks he's screwing in this, or who does he think he is needling in a way that is going to produce a result that he wants? He tried this on the SAVE Act with the Texas Senate endorsement. Remember the whole scheme that Ken Paxton was like, hey, I'll bow out of this. I'll make the Republican establishment nightmares go away. Cornyn will be, as long as you pass the SAVE Act, you can get rid of the filibuster. And again, the math isn't there. And what I don't understand is, from Donald Trump's point of view, I get the priority nature of the Save America Act. And I know he believes that is going to help maintain majorities for him.
Because it changed
in
the way
Congress,
people
because
vote.
it will change the way people vote. But
Where it changes who can vote.
and
right?
by the way, I'm not sure he's right
changes
about
who
that.
can
I'm not sure
Right.
that he's right
He
about
thinks-
that.
he
But I'm just
thinks.
saying that's his thinking. But I don't understand how he doesn't see this getting in his ultimate own way.
Right. I mean, you know this because you cover him every day. Also, the answer is because he is so sure of the power that he has of persuasion that he feels that he can make this work. And clearly nobody can convince him otherwise, despite the facts and the numbers that you just described.